And we are live. Welcome to episode number 29 of the Risk Reward Show presented by Risk Reward Media. My name is Chris Mercado, aka Mr. Risk. And as usual, I am joined by
Mr. Reward.
And as usual, we are here to help you find the upside in your career, in your business ventures, in your personal life. And with that in mind, we'll go straight to our Risk Reward Weekly Rewind. And I think, we've talked a lot about sports in the past, but we have a nice weekly rewind on this intersection on sports and business with the big news from last week in the sports card world. So Fanatics, which is a company that has, probably sold you sports apparel for your favorite teams. Fanatics, which is led by Michael Rubin, has actually found a way to wrestle away the stronghold that the company Topps has had on baseball cards. And they've also done it with the NBA and the NFL. Fanatics is taking over the sports trading card world. And I don't know if this means anything to you, but I used to grow up, I used to collect basketball cards growing up. I have a Derek Jeter rookie card.
We'll save that.
Yeah. So like when I heard about this news, it was really surprising. It felt like it came out of nowhere. And I feel for Topps because they've had this market cornered since like the 1960s. Baseball cards are their space. And for a company to sort of like wrestle this away, it seemed like out of nowhere. It reminds me of two lessons in business. So one, can't sleep on your competitors. So don't take your contracts for granted. You always have to keep working to make sure that no one else is going to get in the way and that you have, this customer loyal to you. And I don't think Topps did that. And then two, I think it's also the power of the network. So Michael Rubin, you might have seen him advocating for justice for Meek Mill or hanging out with Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots. And apparently now he's going into NFTs with Fanatics. But his network is carrying this through like the player associations of all these leagues.
Yeah.
When players know that, oh yeah, Michael Rubin, I've seen him with like Meek Mill or like Jay-Z. This makes it more okay for player association heads to agree to deals. So before the business model was some royalties would be kicked back from Topps to players. But some of the business insights that I've been reading up on these deals are now players through the players associations might actually have some equity stake in the company in this partnership. So those are my thoughts on that. There's partly sentimental value with these thoughts because I still have boxes and stuff. Hopefully I'll find them for next week. What are your thoughts on Fanatics, sports cars, and like even Michael Rubin going into NFTs?
I want to agree with what you said earlier that Topps really dropped the ball here. Not only because of them not. I mean, I feel like they just like you said earlier. When you think of baseball cards, like you think of Topps. When you think of basketball cards, you think of Topps and stuff like that. So I feel like they had their chance, but I feel like they just fell asleep at the wheel in terms of just with like what's next. They didn't adapt to what's coming. And honestly and truthfully, I think this NFT wave is just taking over everything because myself, I have the actual Topps cards too. I mean, I don't have a Derek Jeter, but I have some cards, but I also have some NFTs, so some NBA Top Shots cards, like these moments, and those I think are blowing up. And as you know, this NFT, like is bigger and bigger and bigger, you have a lot of companies that are just like moving towards it. I was watching it was something on YouTube where they said Vogue the magazine is going to start to get into this space also. You have people that are buying, yeah, exactly. So everybody's going into it. WWE is getting into NFTs. So I think Topps was just asleep at the wheel and they just didn't adapt in time. I'm pretty sure if Topps was to come up with some type of like NFT firm, the same way how Michael Rubin did, they would still have this, the sports game on lock. But the fact that they fell asleep at the wheel and that they didn't adapt fast enough with what's happening, Michael Rubin was able to come and sweep the NBA, the NFL, baseball. Who knows if he's going to get soccer next? Like this is just like the start to what NFTs can actually be.
Soccer is the frontier that the United States or Americans in general underestimate because it is the world's favorite game. But America doesn't treat it that way. So, let's look out for that potential as well.
Yeah.
One other point about, I guess, this weekend and or like this past week in our weekly rewind, I think we can categorize this as like a week of battles. So one, you saw the Paul Woodley battle. So Derek, take it away in terms of like what your thoughts on that fight was.
First and foremost, I want to shout out to all of the YouTube channels that I was watching. It's funny how they were. So for me personally, I just didn't buy it because I didn't want to spend the money on it. But I know people are going to live stream it. So like I said, I wanted to give a shout out to all of the people that was able to watch their live streams. But these live streams were named like GTA 5, Fortnite with the boys and stuff like that. But any live you saw and it had like 20,000 people, you knew that they were live streaming this fight.
You can't outsmart the internet. You can't outsmart it.
We did. We did. But the fight itself, it wasn't all that. I recently have became a MMA fan, just because one of the clients I work with, he does jiu-jitsu. So learning about how to fight and stuff like that, that's like a world that I'm kind of getting, more and more like, and I'm tuned with. So Tyron Woodley, I wasn't a fan of him when he was inside of the UFC, but after, when I started to see like his highlights and like his fights, that's when I started to really see like, oh, like he's really, really good. And especially watching him with the sensei, like you can start to see like, hey, like he uses his feet very well. He knows how to dodge punches well. He knows how to grapple well and stuff like that. But Jake Paul, I feel like he's done an amazing job at gathering a crowd. Like he sold out the Cleveland arena, him alone, which I think is he needs to get his flowers for that. As a boxer, I mean, he's only had like 3 fights. So I'm not as like much of a fan of his, but I can respect what he's doing for boxing as like a whole. Some may say that he's killing boxing, but boxing is boxing. And I feel like for a fight fan, you want to see people who you can say like, hey, I want to fight you. And normally in boxing, that stuff just, it doesn't happen. But to the fight itself, I felt like Tyron Woodley should have whipped his ass, but he didn't. I feel like Tyron Woodley, he was kind of scared to punch. There was moments where he had him like on the ropes, but he wasn't throwing anything. Like he wasn't being the monster that we all know that he like truly is. But Jake Paul was able to, hold up his own, give him, a couple of jabs here and there and stuff like that. He also landed some good shots too. But eventually it came down to a split decision. There was one ref who gave Tyron Woodley only 2 rounds. I was like, that's crazy. That sounds like someone just kind of just gave Jacob that fight. I thought it should have
We
been
got paid
much,
off.
or that too. I felt like that fight should have been much closer. But all in all, Tyron Woodley, I mean, I feel like he is a very decent fighter, and the fact that he was only just like limited to use his hands, I still think he did like a great job. I am just wish he would have turned on that switch to be that animal that UFC knows that he is. Because
Well,
if
hold on.
he
Go ahead.
no, I mean, if he would have that switch, I think that he would have went off.
So I don't think there is a switch for either of them. They're both non-boxers boxing. So they're both fish out of water. They're never going to be at their best. I got to give kudos like to everyone for like the hustle and making that money. But as far as like fighting, there's a YouTube star versus a wrestler. Boxing. That don't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. Like, how does that make sense? But again, the marketing prowess, particularly of like the Paul brothers,
Ridiculous.
is amazing. You don't have to like them, but I think you should respect the marketing abilities. But yeah, they're both fish out of water. I would rather talk about a battle where folks are in their actual area of expertise. They are masters of their craft. And that brings us to Kanye versus Drake battling. So last week we previewed this a little bit, and Drake had announced his forthcoming album, Certified Lover Boy, is coming out on September 3rd. And Kanye had these like listening parties, huge listening parties across 3 cities, as like foreshadowing for the album Donda. And he finally dropped it on Sunday. So Derek, let's continue sort of our views on this. What are your views on the album and sort of the escalating battle between them?
The album itself, I feel like people don't kill me, but in my opinion, it was way too long. I think it's like an hour and 20 something minutes. Like, I don't need to be listening to Kanye for that long. I think albums should be between like a half hour to like 40 minutes. I think that's like a good, like decent album. I think this one has like 20 something songs on it, probably like 27. There are like some good tracks on it. I won't lie, but I gave it like a 1, probably like a good like 2 times. I probably just like played it through, but it wasn't anything that really just like stuck out to me. So I mean, I'm waiting to see what Drake does. But I think Kanye for this album, I think it's overhyped.
Yes. I do like the idea of doing listening parties and then editing the album. It's sort of like user testing in tech.
Basically, yeah.
He was like, it's user testing. Nah. Yeah. Yeah. Did people like that? All right, let me get my check back, the baby. They didn't like that track. I found it hilarious, but the way I connected it was, oh, this is like user testing in tech. And I'm not even sure if like what we see on the direct streaming platforms are digital streaming platforms. I'm not sure if that's going to be like the final version of like a physical copy, whether it's like vinyl, right? Of the album. So, there were a lot of delays, and I'm not going to excuse any creative, especially not him, as like, oh, it's just a creative process or whatever. No, like you got a big enough team. You can set deadlines and meet them. But I like how Drake announced his. By the way, he did it through SportsCenter,
which was a beast move.
Yeah, it looked like he took over SportsCenter out of nowhere. And that is like whoever came up with that genius genius marketing. Genius. That's this like next level type of marketing that I like. But when he announced it, it forces Kanye to be like, oh crap, like what do I do? Do I keep waiting? And it felt like it was rushed. So
Mm.
I gave Drake actually kudos for for getting Donda out. I tweeted something about it, about like his like Drake announcing his forces Kanye, and that should be the headline.
Mhm.
But I look forward to again escalating beef as long as there's no like physical harm and
Yeah.
no more sharing of people's addresses, physical addresses. But this beef makes it exciting, and people can like poo-poo it however they want. People love conflict. That's why you read stories, you watch movies. Literally, conflict is the root of every interesting story that you have. So don't act like, oh,
Mhm.
you know, let's get past this. Like, oh, it's two grown men. They should just work it out. No, you love beef, right? So enjoy that conflict again, as long as folks aren't physically hurt. Um, and there's no like low blows in terms of like mental health. But again, like, have y'all listened to hip hop? Are y'all real fans? It's really competitive, and let's go. You know, it goes back and forth. Jay Z and Nas are cool now, but what
It
what
wasn't always
happened?
like that.
Yeah, but what happened in like early 2000s was a really important point in hip hop, but also their careers. So, yeah, don't poo poo conflict because you love it too,
Yeah.
and you know we should embrace it at least for the good sides of it. And you know, I wish both artists who are, you know, for our lifetimes, like two of the most iconic,
Yeah,
who will.
but who they really need to worry about is Kendrick. He came out with a feature and was smashed the entire world with that. So watch out for him, y'all.
He too is iconic,
Yeah.
right? Um, and you know, there's been past beef with Drake and Kendrick. Um,
Like it kind of reminds me of the game, like Game of Thrones. You know how like you had all of the family fighting, but the White Walkers, the real
yeah,
in this, I think is Kendrick.
yeah. Kendrick is definitely iconic, and I think like his album is going to be amazing because of one his established body of work, but
Mhm.
also because last week, as we had noted, like it's his last under his current label.
Yeah.
So there should be. It doesn't feel like a throwaway album, right?
No, it
I
won't
think
be.
he's someone who's gonna close it out with a bang. So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that. So speaking of conflicts and in transitioning to our main topic again, we are doing a small series on effective management. So we want to, you know, do our best in our business ventures, in our jobs to minimize conflict. And one way to do that is to build out processes. So, you know, last week we had talked about building out teams, and if you select team members carefully, that's one way to minimize conflict and maximize the upside for growth and you know, profits and impact. But the second part would be to build out processes, and I can think of no one better than you, Derek, to speak on building out processes. We've already had you in a previous episode simply talk about automation and how you've built that into your company's processes. So I think that our audience can derive so many valuable things from your further insights on how you build out processes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it short and sweet, but when you start to build out any type of process, just know that and especially for like any company, just know that it's not just you. You are not the only one that's going to be doing whatever task or dealing with any type of data. Is literally you're going to have a person that's going to be coming in and just looking at it. So how do you effectively make sure that they have everything they need to where they can work at their best? So once you have that, I guess like understanding and just realizing how your role or whatever you do affects everyone else. So let's say for instance, if you're in sales, you have to work with marketing, you have to work with um HR probably just to make sure that everything is kind of full circle. So my first I guess first thing is know how you affect everyone else on your team. And once you kind of figure that out and see who needs what type of data, who needs to be notified when this happens, just so things are always moving and stuff like that. So once you have like that, process or like that or those thoughts in mind, they can kind of start to build out whatever new process that you can think of, or even revamp like an old one. My first go to, or like my first thing that I do, there's this tool called Poplet, and basically what it is, it's a way for you to kind of build out just like flow charts. And you can say like once the person applies through this type form or through this form here, this is what happens next, or this is the process that I want to actually happen. So once this data comes in, where does this data get stored? Who gets just like notified that this data came? And once you have those flow charts in mind, then I think that's when you start to not only think about you, but this is when you bring it back to your team and see like, hey, does this make sense for you? Does this make your life easier? The fact that I'm creating this like new flow and like in order to make sure that you get all of the info that you actually need. And I feel like once you have those like those main thoughts in mind, building out the process just becomes easy. But just knowing that you have to think of others rather than yourself when building out these workflows.
So last week's episode, building out teams, I think a nice action item or deliverable from that discussion could be this idea of, well, building out teams should result in an org chart. But what we're talking about today is processes, and that should result in a flow chart. So you start seeing the arrows and like I guess back and forth arrows to see how information and resources flow from one to another. There's a lot of interdependencies that can get complex. But I think this idea of, well, step one was org chart, step two is flow chart. That is one great way to simplify, how your business is running or how your company that you work for might be running. And simplicity is going to be at the core of my advice for folks, because especially as companies and organizations enter a growth phase, if your processes up front were not simple, easily understandable, and replicable, then there's going to be a lot of gaps in that next stage of growth. As you hire more team members, you have more customers and clients, and then it becomes sometimes a game of whack-a-mole. So you try to like, hit one problem, right? Try to stop it, and then another one pops up, right? And then you take care of that, but you only have two hands. So like a third one comes up, and like, what do you do? And that's what happens in these growth stages. And we have examples like, Robinhood, right? Having to, they got that surge, and folks weren't able to trade, right? And that related to their main source of income, had to deal with like deal flow. Um, and there's a lot of difficulties that can come in these growth stages that could have been prevented with, again, having a simple, clearly laid out flow chart that could be repeatable in higher level stages of growth with more employees.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds it sounds simple to say, but just plan beforehand. Like if you expect yourself to have X amount of clients, how are you going to handle those clients? If your flow isn't set up, I'm telling you, people will leave so fast. I've seen it like myself. In terms of you go to a company that's not like set up, properly. Even the org chart's not right. The person that's managing you isn't really managing the team that you're on. Like they're not supposed to actually be there. So things like that could always happen. But just know that you as the business owner, your well, I guess I'm just gonna take your take on this, but like your risk of not having something set up is basically that when you have customers or people that you're gonna hire, how they will view it is as if you're not structured enough. And why would I want to work with you? Another risk for you as the either the job seeker or the person that's like working there is you yourself, you have no handle on like what's happening. I'm trying to exactly with what you said in terms of like a whack-a-mole, like you're just constantly putting out fires because there's nothing in place. There's like no proper like assembly line. Like for some reason I am thinking of Ford and how he's not famous for creating the car, but he's famous for creating that line. Like he's famous for creating that process, which made cars come out faster. So if you have that in mind, I think just planning ahead in terms of just making sure what these goals are and what needs to be done, that flow becomes so much easier.
Yes. And I think the way that I approached this as a business owner of now, 8 years is there's one pathway that I think every either business owner or every company that you work for should focus on that can affect all other processes. And the way I refer to it as there's a pipeline that goes from customer acquisition to customer delight. So we talk about being user-centric or customer-centric. And I think it is this pipeline of how do we get customers up front, and then at the end or along the way, how do we keep making customers happy? If you can focus on that pathway and build processes around that, you'll be successful as a business person, as an executive. So for example, starting off with customer acquisition. So this is the idea of, how do we get customers? Where, well, there should be some processes related to that, like hiring. Like, who would I hire to be salespeople, right? And then marketing. Who do I hire to be on my marketing team? And then how does sales and marketing communicate with one another? But that all started from this pathway of, again, customer acquisition to customer delight. And that's the very beginning, right? So when we think about that very customer-centric pathway, and if that was a dedicated focus, I think there's a lot of time, effort, and money that could be saved in the other processes. Like we've heard stories of people with this business idea, and the first thing that they do is hire. They haven't even tested out if customers like what they have to offer.
Yeah.
Right. So they're not on that customer acquisition to customer delight pathway. And when you hire before you even focus on that pathway, you end up wasting all the resources. So, you know, when we talk about, when I teach concepts like custom product market fit in, you know, entrepreneurial classes that I've had, or like workshops, it really speaks to this idea of test it out first along this customer acquisition and customer delight pathway before you start implementing processes that are going to require a lot of money and time.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. You don't want to waste money. I don't want to waste money in my regular life, so I don't want to waste it in my business life.
Yeah. Any other last thoughts on building out processes, Derek?
Going back to our last episode when I spoke about how to just automate things. If there's a way that you can remove yourself from any process, I think that it's like that's best. Not well, I guess I'll say that better. Just remove yourself from having to doing like manual entry in any process. I think that's the much better thing to say or like to actually do, because the more time you have to actually, you know, work with clients or work with your team, that's 10 times better than you sitting behind your laptop or doing something in terms of just like, you know, doing like some type of like just like data entry. I think that will create headaches, craziness. But if there is a way that you can remove yourself from the process and have it still happen, whether that be through, you know, when you're at a point to hire someone, or using tools like Zapier, or you know, just to really kind of help out that process. I think that's my final thoughts on that.
So here's my overall point, and this is not just career related or business related. You cannot get great results consistently unless you have efficient processes. You can get lucky once in a while and get great results. And maybe that great result is the only thing that you need for the rest of your life. It could have been that great, right? But if you want great results most of the time, you're going to need effective processes. The reason I can easily apply for entrepreneurship grants, incubators, or how I can help high school students apply for colleges or scholarships, or help college students apply for internships and fellowships, is because I have processes laid out that are so easily recyclable, repeatable, that it no longer takes much effort for me to do. So I keep all of my applications for programs, for grants in Google Docs. And all I have to do is execute this process that I've implemented, which is I will take the prompts that are required of me in an application. Then I will go to my old docs and copy and paste responses onto a new document with this new prompt. Then I will do some minor editing. I might add a collaborator to proofread, but then it's sent out. In the same way, if I'm coaching folks, I have a similar process for folks applying to opportunities. Sometimes I give them a template beforehand so that it's less work on me. And this process is simple for me. It's simple for whoever my customer or user is. And it's easily repeatable. Like, I hate that it makes me dispensable, but it also allows me to make more impact, because it's already baked in. It's up to the client, the customer, the user to continue to execute on the same process. It's the same process. Might be different prompts, might be slightly different applications. It might be a different interview, but the process is the same. And
What's the process?
the better people execute on that process, the better the chances are that you will have great results consistently, not because of luck.
Mm.
So with that in mind, let's move to our right move right now. So besides sharpening your processes and, you know, buying into this idea of trusting the process, assuming that the process is creating good results, what's your right move right now, Derek?
For me, it's gonna be pretty fun. But this weekend I got to watch the movie Vacation Friends with John Cena. Who else? Who else was in it? Rel. It was very, very funny. They have a really good lesson in it. I don't want to spoil it for people, but I say watch it. But one thing I will say is that John Cena's acting is getting a lot better. So kudos to him. I know when The Rock first started out, it was horrible. And when John Cena first started out, he was like, oh, come on, just go back to wrestling. But this one I think is going to be the role where people are like, we don't say like, oh, like he's really good at acting now.
All right, I'll give him a shot. Speaking of giving people a shot, that is my right move right now. Look, it's back to school season. I know people want to buy back to school gear, backpacks, all that. The back to school essential is a vaccination. And I know Pfizer has just gotten full FDA approval. But what folks may not know is that they're on track to get approval for the younger kids. And, you know, we hear these stories about generally older folks who are on ventilators, but are essentially on their deathbed. But they're asking for the vaccine at that point. And the nurses and the doctors, they can only say it's too late. It doesn't work. So this idea of like vaccines as cheap prevention, I think should dominate every parent or teacher or school administrator's mind. Like, let's get families vaccinated. And I know and I appreciate the concerns about long-term effects, but we already know what the effects are of COVID. We know that folks who are like getting hospitalized recently with like Delta variants, like overwhelmingly are the unvaccinated. So I want your kids to be healthy and have a better experience than they had last year. And I think that starts with getting everyone in the family vaccinated.
We should
That's all I
definitely
got.
spend some time talking about how these companies are dealing with it too. Recently I was reading that Delta, funny enough, the airline is now gonna charge people an extra $200 a month for those who are not vaxxed, just because a lot of the people who are not vaccinated and like they're going to the hospital, it's the company that has to pay for them these bills. So they're basically going to make them pay for it. So I think that's one of the many creative ways that companies are going to start to kind of like mandate these vaccines to happen also.
It's not creative at all. For me, this is simple carrot versus the stick. And this is where I'll tie it into parenting. So the whole idea of a carrot and a stick is, how do you motivate, let's say you're riding on a donkey. How do you motivate the donkey? Do you hit him with a stick, or do you put a carrot out in front of it? And for me, it's both. In New York, there are places where if you get the Pfizer vaccine, you get $100 gift card. That is carrot. What Delta and other companies are doing in terms of, well, if you get charged with medical bills that are COVID related, that's on you. Or you can't enter this venue unless you have proof of vaccination. Like, you can't come to this concert. That is more stick. And as a parent, you have to have a balance of it. I don't think you can do everything from just a carrot. And you definitely can't do everything from just a stick. So I think all measures are needed. Like the latest carrot that I saw was not a carrot. It was a donut. So Krispy Kreme has 2 free donuts for you. If that excites you, that's fine. But I am all for implementing every tool, whether or not it's in the category of carrot or the category of stick. I'm in favor of every tool right now to nudge the desired behavior of getting vaccinated. I want all of us to be in person. I want us to have a better school experience. I want us to have the risk reward career conference, right? And
talk about it.
That doesn't happen unless we really defeat COVID. And there's 2 cheap ways to do that. It's vaccination and masks. And I just hope folks buy in, and I hope that, folks aren't touched by COVID in the deadly ways it has touched millions of people across the globe. I hate that we have to end on a somber note. So say something funny, Derek, before we go, because that was kind of sad.
We are not financial advisors, but buy Bitcoin.
I still think the market is due for a dip, so that won't be ending on a positive note either. So all I will say is, I hope that you've taken some gems from this episode and our previous episode. We are going to reach episode 30 next week. So we wanted to thank you for, again, our audience, for your support. Definitely focus on subscribing and commenting on our YouTube page. And we have some plans down the line for bigger things. And hopefully our audience grows with that, so we can continue sharing some advice that helps you all find the upside in all your ventures and all aspects of your life. So thank you again, and we'll see you next week.
All right.